inescapably,
Escapably foreign.
Yeah.
Well, I'm interested because you briefly mentioned that you had to work hard to break some of those stereotypes.
Oh, yeah.
How do you do that, and what kind of judgments have you received?
Oh man, it was a lot of when I first moved here, and I guess I had a thicker accent too. Um, but like, let me see. I think a lot of it was like a lot of people seem to think that we're all very, very engaged in politics. Like, I'd have people because when I came here, it was like pure coincidence, but it was like 2 months or so after I immigrated here in 2016 was when Trump got elected. So so of course that was the hot topic everyone wanted to ask me about. And I was just like, dude, like it's not my problem. I'm not in that country anymore. I live here. Like, why would I, you know, like why would I be so involved in this? But it was like there is quite a strong stereotype that like Americans are all like super into politics. Um,
Mm,
and so that was one where I just had to be like, no, like you know, I just want to do what's reasonable and what's going to be the best for, like what's going to be the best for people. It's like I want to be able to understand, as much of both sides as I can and, work together with people to come to, you know, a sensible conclusion, not like
yeah.
debate back and forth like this is right, that's wrong, like da da da. It's like, no, I want to like try to understand. Um, whereas, and then as well, like another big one was that Americans are just very, what's the word for this? I guess just kind of think they're better than everyone else. So it's like when I would say like talk about like how much I love like New Zealand and stuff. It's like people would just be like 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 more than living in America, and I'd be like well yeah like especially like when I first came here and like I was just like yeah like definitely. It's like now it's like I'm a bit more reasonable. It's like I can see the pros and cons of both a bit better, but yeah, like stuff like that was a pretty big one. And then the
It,
guns thing was another one. Everyone was just like, yeah,
uh, funny. Oh, that kind of makes me feel like I'm like everyone else because I was just about to ask you about that. I was gonna say, well, Walden, you seem like a pretty centrist guy, or I don't even want to use the word centrist. You just seem like a person. Kind of makes me think about like an old Chris Rock routine. What does he say? It's like everyone's so concerned about being liberal or conservative. Just be a person, right? He's like me. When it comes to crime, I'm conservative. When it comes to prostitution, I'm liberal.
was that the same skit where he talked about how like guns needed to be fully legal, but each bullet should cost like $5,000?
Uh,
Or
I
was that
don't
even Chris
know.
Rock? I can't remember who did that skit, but man,
I
that
don't
was
know,
so good.
man. The routine I'm talking about, I listened to it when I was 12, right? So a long time. I don't even know how I memorized it. It's just so stuck in there. Uh, but anyways, I was gonna ask you because you're a pretty like you've got values a little bit from the right, from the left. You just want to figure out what's the best for everyone. How do you feel about guns? Like, do you miss your gun culture in America now that you're in New Zealand, or are you happy that it's not there?
Oh man, gosh, this is one that I'm sure I will have a lot of people heavily disagree with me about, but I want to give a little bit of background with this. So I'm I actually am pro gun ownership. Part of this stems from because my dad was a sheriff, so I was taught a lot of respect for guns and also how to use guns from quite an early age. And so was my whole family. My siblings were all taught how to use guns. They were taught to respect them more than anything. And it was something that my dad, he took it very seriously. It's like, it was something that he made very clear. It's like, this is not a toy. This is not a game. Like, this is something that like you respect because, this can save your life, as it did save his life multiple times, and I believe even saved my sister's life once actually as well. Owning a gun and knowing how to use it. So it's one of those things where it's like because of the experience that I grew up with, I'm definitely biased and I'm aware of that. Um, it's one of those things where it's like because in New Zealand it's like you have I guess like with some of the gun laws here, and I guess this is also my understanding of it. Like I couldn't quote this or point to a resource, but this is just from knowing people that do have guns here. But like um, because of course, like people hunt here and stuff. Like, there are elk, there's deer, and but mountain goats and wild boar and stuff here. So like, there's quite a good hunting culture. Um, but it's like some of the rules around guns here is like, for example, if you have to like go through quite an extensive process to get like a license for one, which I agree with that. Like, I think it should be way more difficult to get a gun. And I also feel like there should have to be like regular like background checks or like even like psychological checkups, like like yearly or something, in order to like retain that. Um, Completely seems reasonable to me, right? But with here, there are also laws where if you do own a gun, it's like, for example, it must be locked away in a safe, and the ammunition must also be locked away in a separate place, so they cannot be together. And my issue with that is like, if someone breaks into my house, that doesn't really help me. Um, and it's like the main reason why, like, like when we have a place in America, like I'll definitely own guns again, or like, the reason why I would want to own that here is in the case of something like that happening, which, very rare, very unlikely, but it's one of those things where it's like, in the case of that, yeah, I'm not here to play with that. But it's like in that case, it's kind of like, well, I stand a better chance if I run to the kitchen and grab a knife. And then
Yeah.
what if it's multiple people that are broken in, like a gang robbery or something? So that's something that I'm, yeah, not really on board with. But I've given a little bit of context for why I'm biased with that one. So yeah, I hope that helps.
Yeah, no, I get that. I guess some people listening to this might might hate on it. But that's all right, right? That's the thing. We have to be able to disagree and still have respect for each other. I talked
100%.
about that in one article. Like your opinions don't define who you are, and if your opinions do
Yes,
define who you are, you're never going to be able to change them, right?
that is so refreshing, and I'm so glad that you talk about that too, because like something that I can't remember where I heard this quote from a while ago, but somebody talked about like a really big issue with a lot of like millennials and younger generations is they can't separate their opinions from their identities. And so it's like any a disagreement with an opinion feels like a personal attack. And it's like
Exactly.
this is when you get those really nasty, just mudslinging fights that like, it's like, well, if we just tried to understand where the other person's coming from, which is why I gave that context at the start of that, then it's like, well, we're less likely to get down a shitty rabbit hole like that and actually preserve the relationship. Whereas, I mean, how many friendships or relationships do you know that have ended because of something like that, right?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so glad
And
you wrote
and to
about that.
touch on the gun control, like I'm someone that wasn't raised in that culture, and I I want stricter gun control just from what I see in America with school shootings and everything like that. I just anything that can put this to an end, I want to be on that side. But then in Canada, I've heard what you mentioned as well, right? Where you have this law where you have to lock up the gun separate from the bullets. And you mentioned it now to protect yourself from intruders or robberies. But I've also heard the argument that these laws kind of discriminate people who are in rural areas and need to protect themselves from, let's say, cougars or bears and stuff. And this really happens in Canada too, in the Chilcotin.
I didn't
And the
even think
guy
about
says,
that.
I don't follow the rule. I put my gun under my bed because I've had times where I go outside quickly, take a piss, right? And there are cougars right there. He's like, I need my gun accessible, right? And
That's
then
so country.
right, but then you got like city folk. I'm kind of in between, but like I guess I usually have more of the values of city people, but I understand that how pretentious it is when it's all of a sudden like, yeah, but like it's not important, and we should be super strict with these gun laws, and like almost kind of looking down on the rural people. And we have to understand that these laws are different and used differently in different situations, right? So it is a
100%.
complicated issue.
Big
Yeah.
time, man. And that's such a good point too about the rural. I didn't even think to mention that earlier. Where it's like where I grew up, like we were 30 minutes away from the nearest town. It's like if if the worst had happened, like if someone did decide like, hey, this looks like a really easy place to rob, no one's gonna get there for like at least like 20 minutes. Like that's not a good spot to be in.